recording and going live right now.
We live?
I think so. All right, we should be live. Hello, everybody.
All right. Hello, world.
Hello, world.
Hello, all of you. Yep, we are
Yep.
live. And actually, I need to change the screen. Here
What
we
happens
are.
when you broadcast to the internet? You get everybody.
All right.
Exactly.
So let's give it just a few
Awesome.
minutes and we'll let some people start tuning in.
All right.
And I'm going to try to keep an eye on the comments. Right now we have 2 total people watching, so we're killing it.
Woo!
Killing it. There will be more. There will be more. Sometimes on my end, the comments, like, it doesn't refresh. It, like, will just be stagnant for, like, 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, it's like, pew, pew, pew,
They'll all
pew,
come
pew,
through.
pew. And it's very weird because I'm, like, watching our conversation and then broadcasting and then Facebook. There's like 5 of us.
Aw.
It's crazy. So, how are you doing, Lisa?
I am doing awesome. How are you ladies doing?
Hanging in there. TGIF.
Yeah.
TGIF.
Right?
That's what
Truly,
I'm saying.
truly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
it's
actually.
beautiful.
No, go ahead. Tell me.
I was going to say it's beautiful in Scottsdale, Arizona here, but we're supposed to get our first 100-degree temperatures over the weekend. So our spring is already over.
Whoa.
I'm missing it already. And, we've been so housebound and, can't really travel a whole lot. So I've missed the wildflower season. I've missed the beautiful weather that, people pay a premium to live here for. So, but I have a pool. So we'll at least go for that over the summer.
There you go.
Jealous. So my apartment complex, I mean, it's the right thing, but they closed our pools. And I was so excited when I moved here to use the pools. And so I'm so selfishly conflicted of like,
Yes.
I really just
Yes.
want to go lay in the sun, but I get it. But I really want to go just lay in the sun, but I get it.
I know it. It's tough.
Oh,
It's
well.
tough. Although I have to laugh, in Arizona, they considered golf an essential service. So golf courses are open, and they actually noticed an uptick of over 2,000 more tee time registrations this spring than last spring. So I don't know, social distancing, that whole thing not working out so well here at the golf course.
Whoa. I'm going to reserve my opinions for off camera on that. Cool. We have a good amount of people tuning in. Cecil says hello. Jeff Allen says hello. Glenn says hello.
Hey.
Diane says Lisa rocks. So,
Aw.
alrighty.
Aw.
Cool. Well, I think we have a good audience built up. Let's get started.
All right.
Yeah. Awesome. So, all right. So, actually, why don't we get started with a little bit of background history from you, Lisa? For those of the world who don't know about your photography yet, could you tell us a little bit about what you do, about your type of photography, and what you like to photograph?
Yeah. So, I've been a photographer since I was 8, and I first learned how to be a bird watcher, and I had one of those little Instamatic, 126 millimeter cameras, and took probably really crappy pictures at the time. But I do remember my first decisive moment in my journey with photography, and that was at SeaWorld, where the shamu would come up and kiss the lady leaning over the edge. That's kind of like a classic thing when you go there. And I remember being 8 with that little pocket camera, go running down close to the fence so I could get this, and taking that decisive moment and kind of anticipating the timing and then getting wet. But anyway, that was kind of my first memorable moment with photography. I think I've leveled up since then, hopefully. But ever since then, I've always loved nature and wildlife. I was a birder since I was 8. For those who don't know what that is, that's when you're really in love with bird watching. And I got started with that with my great aunt Jo, who taught me how to do that from the time I was little. So very formative with that. And then I've just been hooked on nature and wildlife since. It doesn't mean that I don't do other things. I do a lot of abstract work. I do a lot of interior design type photography, more creative things and more stuff for interiors. I do pet portraiture, regular portraiture, cowboys. I love environmental portraiture. We'll talk about cowboys more in a moment. But, I branch out. I do different things, flat lay photography. I get itchy. I don't want to just do one thing all the time. But nature and wildlife is my, secret sauce, and that's what I grew up on, and that's my first thing I gravitate to.
That's awesome. Actually, I think the first time you and I met was at the Tamron booth, and you were wrangling the puppies,
I
from what I remember. So
the puppies and the participants. That booth, for those who don't know, at Photo Plus Expo in New York, we had this wonderful event where we brought in rescue dogs, and then we were teaching photography tips, and it was so wildly popular. You couldn't even hardly move. It was so full of people. But the cool thing and I think this was David Akubian's time when he was teaching, because we would take turns, and one of those dogs was rescued by one of the participants at the event, and they left and took the dog home. So it was a really cool story out of that. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun doing the pet portraiture. I love doing that. Yeah.
That was such a great,
that was awesome.
Great event.
It was awesome. A lot of feel good stuff happening there that weekend.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about being involved with all different kind of genres of photography, because I think now a lot of us kind of get stuck in specifically going in one direction. We always have to be just one theme, right? If your Instagram says you're a wedding photographer, you're a wedding photographer, and that's it.
Exactly.
So it is nice to hear that there's different genres out there. But and I know you have some images for us. So if you want to bring those up, why don't we chat about your background and imagery?
Let me bring them up, and I will share my desktop with you. 1 second, I'll pull that up here. So I think you can see my desktop now, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Ooh,
all right, awesome.
Pretty. Pretty.
So this is one of the images from my Magic of Cowboys workshop, which you have to understand, as a wildlife and nature photographer, I never wanted to initially get involved in portraiture. I was like, no, not for me. Don't want to photograph people. It was very intimidating and all of that stuff. And I'm sure if portrait photographers are listening to this, they're rolling their eyes like, no, it's fun. But as a wildlife photographer, you tend to want to be behind the camera, not interacting with people. But as I got started with my portraiture journey, I learned to like it, but I learned that I don't do well in learning environments that are intimidating. Who does? But I didn't learn well in that environment. And so as I had more fun with portraiture, I wanted to start teaching other people, this is fun, and you don't have to feel threatened and intimidated and scared and nervous. And I find a lot of that comes from, those 20-year-old scantily clad models that know what they're doing, and we feel like idiots because we don't when we're first learning portraiture. So I designed this whole workshop. It's nature and portraiture in a really non-threatening, non-intimidating way. We have real cowboys, and they sure as heck don't know how to pose, but they're happy to do anything you tell them to, and we tell you how to do it. And we just have a lot of fun. But then we switch it up, so it isn't just 100% portraiture. And so, for example, this image here, if you guys are able to see that, hopefully so. This image here is it's called our Horses in the Dark part of the workshop. We do different things all day long, from landscapes to silhouettes to flat lay to, portraits, night photography. It's really a jam-packed buffet of photography all weekend long. But one of the things we do is teach you how to use low-key lighting in the dark. So after dinner, after we do our chuck wagon dinner and our campfire stuff, we get back out and we start photographing horses in the dark. So these are just a couple of examples of the things that you can do after dark. And then we teach you how to do it with cowboys as well. And we get some really fun looks and very simple lighting. We use like lume cubes, and we do use some strobes, but we design it to be easy and doable and not intimidating when you're first stepping into this world. So that was just a couple of those from the cowboy, kind of how we do some of our portraiture stuff. And I'll just kind of flip through and show you some images as you go along, but continue, Erica and Sarah.
No, I love those.
No, that's okay. I just got a text about our audio and video, so I wanted to make sure it was all good. But it seems like we're up and running just fine. So just checking.
Awesome.
But yeah, do you have, so running through kind of your images here, do you, out of these or any other particular moment, have kind of like a proudest moment that you remember?
Oh my gosh. What makes me proud, I have some wonderful images that I love. I'll pull up a couple here. One of my favorites is probably this one here, because it's so striking and there's a funny story behind it. And I'll talk about the proudest moment. This is one of my favorite images from the workshop because it's so dusty and the sun was setting and all this beautiful stuff. And we actually had a truck brake torque the tires to kick up the dust on this driveway as you come into the ranch, and then we had the cowboys run through it. So it's so funny how you can contrive these things but get these great effects. But honestly, my proudest moment with this workshop, and I've done it a number of times, it's in just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. My proudest moment, many of you may know this, but I had to go through a whole lot of cancer treatment this year. So I was diagnosed with stage 3C cancer, and the prognosis is good now. I have my CAT scan next week, but I've went through, about 9 months of chemotherapy, radiation, treatment, a whole bunch of stuff. And because of all of that, and Tamron had also wanted to sponsor this workshop, I ended up giving away 4 free seats to cancer survivors from around the country. And I just, I basically posted it, in my newsletters and social media. And I said, you can either nominate yourself, or if you know of someone, nominate them. And then I did a random drawing. And at first I was just going to give away 1 seat. I ended up giving away 4. And it was so cool because it changed the context of the group, and it was for my women's only version of this workshop. Nothing against the men. I have a mixed workshop the weekend before. I do this twice a year, but it was very special is the best way I can just describe it. It changed the tone. There was a lot of grace and grateful moments there. We had way tons of fun, but it was really neat to share my experience with others, and likewise, and it just touched a lot of people, and it was so much fun. So that's probably one of my proudest moments with regard to this workshop, above any photo for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. It sounds like you really kind of get to, it's about the photography, of course, but then you connect with people on a different level too. You're just
really
kind of like, you support each other in that way.
You really do. And I think it surprised me too, even though I had high expectations, because I always set my expectations high for these events. But there was a energy there that just was palpable. It was very cool, and it was just special. And I finished my last chemo treatment 3 weeks ago, so I was doing this workshop during chemo and radiation, and we still knocked it out of the park. It's full time when we do this, but we had a lot of fun. I had, extra assistants helping, and we made it all work. And it was awesome, frankly. And Tamron coming in was so special. We had 6 cases of lenses for everybody to try. And we had several people from your team who were just fantastic. So it was just a good time all the way around.
I remember Jill.
I'm jealous.
Jill talking about
Yeah.
the food. Jill said was it the chuck wagon, dinner, whatever?
Yes.
I remember her saying how awesome it was.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we had Jill Bell, we had Mark Morris and Sue Palermo all there. And oh my gosh, the food is fantastic. I mean, the catering, we do chuck wagon, and you might think you're getting kind of like basic food. No, it is gourmet chuck wagon, and it is fantastic. And the lady comes in and she brings in truckloads of stuff, and they're cooking on these steel pots. I should have thrown a picture in here of that. It's pretty awesome all the way around. And then you walk away stuffed, and then you go shoot horses in the dark. So it's a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, here's one of our picture of our group all participating at the end of the day.
I love that.
I feel like you're going to have like the whole Tamron crew on this next year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh my gosh, you guys got to come
I'll
out.
go just for fun.
Yes.
right.
I don't know if you've cued the video at all for that or not, but the backdrop to this place is so stunning. It is right up against the Superstition Mountains. You can't get better landscapes. So we'll go and shoot. Let me pull up the picture. So what we do first thing in the morning is we'll do silhouettes on the top of the mountain. So here's a couple just to give you an idea. We have cowboys ride their horses up on the top of this ridge, and we shoot the sunrise coming up. And so you get these gorgeous pictures. And then right about the time the sunrise comes up, you turn around because it's too hot to shoot this now. You turn around and it is dynamic landscape light, and you have the most perfect scene. So we literally pivot 180 degrees and continue shooting. And I don't have a picture of that because I don't often shoot during the workshop. I grab a few things here and there, but you might be able to see it in some of the videos. But it's spectacular. It's quite it's quite an amazing experience.
That's beautiful.
So
Actually, I have the video queued up. Why don't we show?
awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Preface, everybody. This is a new step in my broadcasting abilities. So we're gonna see if there might not be any audio.
I have faith in you.
There might not be audio. So let's see what happens.
I'm ready. It's gonna be great. Sarah, you're so good at this. I know it's one of those things where there's just so many little intricate steps. Like one little step, like.
And do I need to pause my sharing so that works for you? Okay.
Yeah, I think I gotta go on Magic and Cowboys next year. I'll check.
Yeah, no, you need to come. It is so much fun. What I love, and while you're here, let me know if that comes up and you need to stop talking. But one of the things I love about what I do and what we create, these environments that we create, the atmosphere that we create in this workshop and anything else that I do, it always comes from a place of sincerity and humility. I hate egotistical anything. I can't stand when people are hoity-toity. I can't stand when there's this air of superiority to things. I want everybody to come along with me and have a good time. I mean, yes, I know photography, but everybody that comes... Oh, go ahead.
Wait, one second.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, everybody. I'm going back to the interview. Okay, cool. Well, Lisa, will you...
All right.
Do you have more images to show, or if we'll...
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Yep,
Pull them up.
I can pull them up.
Yay.
So,
right.
in addition to what we do there, just for some fun, it's like a buffet of photography. So I actually bring in a reenactment group that it dresses up down to the buttons, accurate to the mid to late 1800s. And they come in and they're a part of our models for the day. And it's a weekend workshop, but for one day they come in and we can do all kinds of things from portraits to, action shots. And so, this is, for example, one of the silhouette shots that we'll do at, sunset with them. And then we have, let me go a little bit further here. We'll have the cowboys riding the horses in, giving people an opportunity to do that. And then what's really fun is we have them load blanks into their gun. And these are antique real guns from the 1800s. It's mind blowing just to look at them. I'm not really a gun person, but it's very fascinating to look at. And then we shoot the flames coming out of the gun. And it's kind of tricky, but we do it. Mark did a good job when he came out, Mark Morris. But it's just a hoot because you never know if you're going to get it or not until you look on the back of the camera. And then, everyone in the workshop's like, I got it, or I missed it. And it's kind of like we keep doing it until everybody gets the shots that they wanted.
That's when it pays to have a camera that's
that's awesome.
10 shots a second. Oh, that is so cool. It looks like fireworks.
It does. And it's just the flame, and it is a microsecond. Like, you really have to time it right, and we teach how to do that. But then, we do other things with low-key lighting in our cowboys. This is, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. It's how I discovered this ranch. And, we do really fun, I think I've showed you this before, but the low-key cowboys. The woman on the right here is Shelly. She is the owner of the ranch. She runs the ranch. I mean, she has help, but she takes care of everything. And it's not unusual to see her riding around with a wheelbarrow, shoveling manure, right on up to running the ranch and the rides that they have. And then this woman here on the left, she is 95. And she rides her horse every day, and she still runs around the country leading health and wellness workshops. And she's a barrel of fun too. And these two have been friends for a long time. So we get into the stories and the history. That's, to me, what photography is about. Is it isn't just getting beautiful pictures. It's really learning a lot about everything else that encompasses where you are and what you do, and really immersing yourself in that experience. And there's just no better way to do that than this, because everyone's so humble and fun and non-judgmental. We just have a great time. So
that's cool. And you talk about the the guy that you had in one of the other pictures, about him being kind of the connection to the ranch. How did you connect yourself with this particular
Yeah.
ranch?
This is his horse, Joker, by the way.
Oh.
Um, but
Oh,
there's the lady. So let me see if I can find a picture of Ben. There's Ben. So Ben, I actually met him through another connection of mine years ago when he was at a small cafe in a small mining town in Arizona, and one of my friends who didn't know him walked into the cafe and saw this cowboy all decked out, but then on his laptop, and it was just kind of a funny thing to see, like almost like two different worlds colliding. And so they started talking, and then I got introduced to Ben through an event that I was teaching photography at through a state park in Arizona. And then Ben and I became friends. And I said, one of these days, I really have this vision of doing a cowboy and ranch workshop in Arizona. People just aren't doing them here. And it's an amazing place. And so he took me off into some different ranches and introduced me to people. Some of them were so back in the most remote parts of Arizona. I was in like four-wheel drive low, driving through washes, trying to get to these ranches. And like, I don't think the average person could get back here. He took me to, if you've ever heard of Wyatt Earp, his wife, Maddie, is buried not far from the ranch that I do this at. But we finally got to a ranch that was easy to access from main roads, had the perfect setups for what we wanted to do. And, I love working with other women. And, Shelly was just this wonderful owner of the ranch. And nobody had ever done anything like this at this ranch. So we kind of did a beta run. And then, I do the workshops now. And I feel like I have this whole other family at this ranch now that you walk away feeling like you really are part of the family, not just me, but the people that are there. It's a really special experience. And, you keep in touch all year long. But that's how Ben and I met. And he's now one of my main cowboys. So he kind of helps me organize the rest of the group and get things going that we needed, because it's constant. We're doing portraits here, and then we're doing cattle roping there, and then like it's literally like a three-ring circus, but it's a lot of fun. And then this is Steve. This is one of my guitarists that I hire in the evening. And he plays the most amazing music for us. And he's a songwriter, and he writes these songs that are just, this is another one of Ben, just incredible. This is one of our reenactment actors, and we'll do some vintage stuff with them, and roping. And I mean, it's just full-time fun.
I love how I
So
love how this really kind of gets to your original point. Like it on surface seems like it might be something intimidating to shoot, but you get out there and you're making photos of like real people in a real environment, and you're learning so much. I think that seems so valuable
yeah, and
and
we
very
do
approachable.
posing. Very approachable. I was always very intimidated when I started doing portraiture, which is why one of the reasons why I was like, oh, I don't like this. It felt threatening to me. And maybe it was the specific environment that I was in, or the instructor, or what have you, but it was very intimidating. What do we do with all these lights? And then I'm supposed to know how to pose a model. And then the model is young and beautiful, and that's intimidating to a lot of people. The whole thing can be really startling when you get started. And I wanted to strip all of that away. So like these cowboys, this is Rick. Um, they are like, what do I do? What do you want me to do? And we teach some basic posing that makes it really fun. And everybody gets a chance to try, and no one passes judgment, because these guys don't know the first thing about modeling, which is great for people who are learning how to
Mm-hmm.
pose, because it's not intimidating and you get to try on all kinds of things. I mean, if they're physically able, they'd stand on their heads for you if you wanted them to. And so, and we just have a lot of fun, and you really get, we start out teaching natural light, like this is natural light, and then we'll gradually introduce reflectors. Then we build in one light, and then we do some things at night. But we don't throw the kitchen sink at it, but we do an introduction so that you feel less intimidated, and next time you go and pose your grandkids, you have some tools to do it. Or the next time you might meet, maybe you're into street photography, you might meet someone on the street, you have a few things that you can take with you to understand how light works, maybe where you'd want to pose them and how, and right on up into, people go and buy lighting systems, and go use it. So it's very fun, very non-threatening. This is another one from just natural light. We start out that way. That's one of Rick. But these guys are just iconic cowboys, and we're losing them. There's not as many left, every year. And these guys know so much. Talking to them, it's incredible. It's a learning experience unto itself.
A gal named Sandra in the comments said Lisa's workshops are incredible. She goes above and beyond to make the experience fabulous.
Oh, thanks, Sandra. And hi, how are you?
I don't. I could try to say her last Kinderneck. I
Yes.
probably I did that wrong. I'm sorry, Sandra, but thank
No.
you.
Yeah, and Sandra, you came to my Magic of Hummingbirds workshop, which is totally different from cowboys, but we do hummingbird workshops in southern Arizona and do a lot of artsy stuff with it at high key, and I teach you how to do the flashes, with to get the frozen wings, but then there's all kinds of other nature photography. That Magic of Hummingbirds it's a riot, and Sandra came, and she's a wonderful person, so it was so fun to meet her. So here's some of the guys, and this was just a candid shot of them kind of just taking some time out at the ranch, and just fun.
Oh, I love that.
It's all
I love their
fun.
shirts just like standing out against all this brown and orange. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, color harmony, which is a big part of getting really good portrait images, studying up on color harmony, and we'll get some tips for that. Now, I don't dress them. That's up to them when they come here. But
Well, that
this
worked
really
out great.
worked in this background. Yeah,
Yeah,
it did.
that was like a great coincidence.
Yeah, and this cowboy here sitting down in the middle, his name is Matt, and he's a wonderful cowboy that we work with. And he's been in several movies. He's been in several commercials. You might recognize him in sitting opposite Kevin Costner in now, and I've just drawn a blank on the name of the movie, but not Tombstone, but Wyatt Earp. So anyhow, he helps out at the ranch every winter. They come down, and he's just part of the tapestry there. And he has
awesome.
Another ranch in Colorado.
Very cool.
So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's Steve, one of our musicians, and he does just a fantastic job at night singing for us around the campfire. And yeah, I just try to cultivate a whole atmosphere. And, we photograph all these guys and girls. We have women too. So anyhow, it's just fun.
Very
and,
cool.
It's what I love to do. I love this is the scenery there. I mean, it is wicked amazing. And I just love giving people a good experience. If I'm not having fun, I know they're not having fun. And to me, the last thing I'd want is someone to feel stupid or, unknowledgeable at something. So we just meet them where they are and help their journey further through knowledge and really fun scenery to photograph. So.
Yeah. Well, so I want to make sure that, we've definitely, your cowboy stuff and is incredible in this workshop. I want to go on.
Me too.
So I think with
So
Ken,
bad.
if you're listening, we're all going to end up on this next year.
Sounds like fun.
I'll live stream it. It's fine.
Yeah, there you go.
I have any skill.
I love it.
I'll live stream it.
Yeah.
Sarah's going to be out there with her entire kit, just like ready to go.
Got my table, I got my monitor, I got my lights. So.
Well, and the Cowboys have a pretty good sense of humor, so you might get some really fun outtakes on that live stream. We do have cowgirls too, just FYI.
Perfect. Good. That's great. Everyone should be involved.
Right.
So we've touched upon all of this with your Magic of Cowboys workshop and all of that. But to make sure that everyone, of course, still knows that you're involved with not only portraiture and landscape and this workshop and just so many things. I was kind of curious about your life within wildlife. Have you had any sort of close calls with your wildlife, or is there any sort of recommendations you can make to people when you are out with wilderness?
Yes, yeah, and I'll pull up some wildlife here just since we have our screens going here. So I've had several close experiences. I wouldn't call them dangerous experiences by any means, but it just so happens this is the first image. This bear was probably 20 feet from us. I do have a guide. This is one of my bear workshops in Alaska. We do a lot of things in Alaska, but one of them is bears. And this is a sub-adult bear, so probably about 4 to 5 years old.
He's so cute.
And they're cute. Yeah, totally cute. They're curious and, they love that fun and, they're kind of curious about us. But the way we do it is that these bears know that people are in a certain area. So we're out in Lake Clark National Park and you could, go anywhere. These bears know that people tend to stand in this area and it's not crowded by any means. Most of the time, my own group is the only one there. But they're habituated to understand this is not a threat. these people are here every day. Somebody's here, and we get it. And so we had experience. It was really fun. I wish I could show you a video of it, but we had an experience where there was a sow, which is a female bear, that was being courted by a boar, which is a male bear, and these are Alaskan brown bears. The boars can get up to about 800 to 1,000 pounds, so big bears. And she was being courted, and she wanted none of it. And so she started running from way back out in the valley more towards us. Well, right behind us is a beach, and there's mud flats out there, and they do clam digging. So you'll see bears all over. I mean, we get about 20 to 40 bears a day. So anyway, this boar is chasing her, and so she started taking off, and she didn't know that he had stopped chasing her at that point, but she ran right for us because humans actually can be a protection, right? A larger group of humans. I had about 8 or 9 people with between instructors, my guide, and myself and the group. So she runs right for us, knowing that we can be a source of protection, which is counterintuitive. Of course, you have to watch their tells, and that's why I have a full-time guide that knows everything about bears and is armed if we needed it. We've never needed it, and nor has he ever needed it. But anyhow, she's running for us. Well, all of a sudden, everybody's sitting there photographing this face-on bear running, and they're all excited. And then all of a sudden they realize the frame, it's getting fuller and fuller and fuller in the frame. And they kind of look, and we just said, just part the seas, just step aside and don't do a lot of motion. So everybody kind of stepped a couple feet aside. She ran right through the center of us, about 5 feet away. Whoa. And right on out to the beach. And it was like, everyone looked at each other, was like, did that just happen? But you have to understand, and it's hard when you haven't been there. And everyone, I call it paranoid, right? I'm a little scared of bears. You have to understand the circumstances and what's actually happening, because a bear running at you would normally be a terrible, terrifying thing. You have to understand what's happening, what the game plan of the bear is, the daily habits. And that's why I use a guide that's there every day who knows these bears inside and out, knows what we need to do to stay safe. And they've never had a problem in the 36 years, I think it is, that they've been in business. Yeah. And that's why. But yes, we've had close experiences, and I've had close experiences with moose and orca and birds and eagles. I was 10 feet away from an eagle that landed right in front of me and took pictures. So it just depends. But I've never had a scary, this is her as well, it takes a second to resolve here, but let me go back to this. But yeah, I've never had a scary experience. Always felt safe in anything that I've done.
Do you recommend people go out with a guide to new places? Is that part of part of the work that you're doing is involving a guide?
That's a really good question. For many of the things I do, I involve a guide, either because they are licensed to bring people to that location by state of Alaska requirements and permits. So I will work with them. And also they may be the pilot in the float plane that we're using, or they may be the captain of the, fishing boat that we're using, or the, I use big boats as well, but they're the ones that are licensed to operate the equipment that we need for that day. So I always have a guide with me for anything like that. If we're just touring around taking pictures, I don't need that. I've been to Alaska almost 50 times now. I know the area really well. But anywhere someone goes, not just Alaska, it's helpful to know the area. It's helpful to know the temperament of the animal that you're going to photograph. Moose look like they're just kind of lumbering along and, very unthreatening, even though they're big. They kind of look like big, awkward horses. But moose can move on a dime, and you really need to pay attention. If there's a sow there, a cow there in the spring, a female moose, she's probably got a baby lying down somewhere nearby. So you do not want to get close, even though they look so unthreatening on the surface. So there's just things you need to understand about the animals. Yeah, and a guide can help give you that information or take you along, depending on what you need. Here's that eagle that I was 10 feet from. This was shot with my Tamron 150 to 600, and I wasn't nearly needing all the zoom of that. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah, pretty cool animals out there. So anyway,
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, if we're ready to, we can segue into some business talk and kind of how.
Sure.
We're handling this situation now. Although I want to ask one question, because I have a question from the comments, because they're actually loading this time. Harry asks, Lisa, do you ever do high-key people portraits?
Ooh, good question. So I showed it a moment ago and I've lost the image now, but I did a vintage high key of Rachel, one of the cowgirls, at the ranch, and we did that in natural light. And I also did, let me see if I can just pull that up really quickly. Bear with me. Here's my desktop and everything, but we'll get there. If we do, let's see here, if I can find it in time. There we go. Let me go find that picture. So here's high key portrait. I have a few actually. This is the interesting part is this is the same background as this, but we moved the baby and the cowboy into the shade. There's an overhang from the barn of the ranch, and it was really bright out. So you can expose. So that is actually the same background as that, just different situation. I think I have
cool.
one more here.
It's
Yeah.
great to see
So
a
yes,
high
I
key.
do.
It's great to see high key used in this like natural element, because like when I think high key, I think of studio lighting, multifaceted, just like complex, bright light, you know,
Yeah.
versus using it outside. So it's very cool to see it used in such a variety of ways.
Yeah, and you can do high key, portraits with the white backdrops and the lights and the, cloth and all that. But where possible, we will teach how to do it in the field using natural light. You need the right thing, you need the right light, you need the right subject wearing the right things, but we can do it. And I also teach, and I don't have a picture of this, but we also teach how to do high key nature photography. So, things like the prickly pear and the saguaro are abundant out there. How would you shoot that in high key? So we teach some of that as well. It's actually the very first thing we teach at the workshop. And so we just give people so many different tools to do. It's not one note, you come away learning a smorgasbord of information about, how to shoot
Very
and what
cool.
you're shooting and ways you can do it. Yeah. So anyhow, I'll just kind of click through some things as you're talking.
Yeah, for sure. So, so I'm gonna this question's gonna be kind of a two-part.
Okay.
First off, how are you kind of coping with the business aspect of photography right now? And I feel like that's going to probably easily segue into talking about your webinars, because I know you've done like a lot, like 2,000-ish, I think was the number that we had discussed earlier. So I'm sure that's playing in a huge role. So talk about that and just how you are making work or putting work on hold, and just what's happening in your photography life right now.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. You bring this up, and yes, I've done at least 2,000. I have lost count. Before my career as a photographer full time, I did it part time, and I was also a psychologist that consulted around the world on best practices for working with children with learning disabilities. So that was my whole career, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way. I'm just saying I got really well known for what I did around the world and was in demand. So I would do a lot of on-site stuff, but I would do a lot of webinars for that. And I really learned a lot about what keeps people interested and engaged, what doesn't. There's a lot of instructional strategies that you need to use to be a good instructor. And so not only did I do workshops on site, I would do a lot of remote consultation and do professional development. That translated and prepared me so well for doing this in photography. And so often when I hear people say, well, I went to this webinar and, they checked out before it was done, because people don't always know all those strategies and how to build content for a web-based delivery. And, and that's some of the stuff that is my secret sauce. And I love teaching as much as I love taking pictures. But back when I started doing this a lot more. I mean, I've always done some with photography, but I was traveling so much that it was hard to kind of do anything with any regularity. But when I was diagnosed with cancer last July, I had to cancel certain workshops and opt out of certain events and things like that. And that was a huge part of my income. So then I transitioned to doing webinars, and it actually was really helpful because I was able to, build people's trust, and they build a following doing that. And now I have some, people that take pretty much everything I offer. And I do a lot of different topics as well. So, so that kind of led up to now we have this COVID situation. And I felt like I was much better prepared to continue to do webinars and now stay at home, kind of like how I have been from the cancer. I was thinking I would be done by now. And I was actually going to be at the Florida Birding and Photo Festival, which is a Tamron sponsored event, coming up here in a week. But now I do the webinars much more often. I've got multiple webinars going on each day because I've offered to give for free to camera clubs a webinar. So I've had dozens of camera clubs contact me. I've done some for Tamron. I do some myself, and they're on my website. You can go and check out all the topics. I'm always offering something new, but to me, it's a joy. I know it can be scary for some if they've never done it, but for me, it's second nature because I've already been fluent in how to develop all this, and there is technique to it. But I love doing it, and it keeps me in touch with the people I can't see in person. So for me, that's been a primary source of income through this COVID situation. And now I'm teaming up with some other people to do some innovative things in a, web delivery kind of format. So you're going to see some other things down the road before too long too.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, besides even the income part of it, how are you staying inspired? Are there projects coming up, or are there things you're able to shoot from the safety of your home, or are the webinars kind of the inspiration, the specialness right now?
A little bit of both. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm at home, but we actually 3 weeks ago moved. So I moved the day I had chemo. Who does that? But I did it. But we moved, and so anyway, I literally left for chemo in the morning at 9 o'clock, and I came home at 6 o'clock, and I was in a new house. So so that was interesting. But I did this because I do a lot of art and design as well with my photography, and I really have kind of shifted my nature and wildlife photography to be very palatable for interiors, which is something that's a struggle for many people, and I've kind of figured out a recipe that works. So I have now that I'm in this new house, I have all kinds of workspace that I can use. So I've got a 3-car garage, and I've got, a wood shop that I need to set it up right now. But I have so many things that I can do from home that I've been craving to do for the last couple of years, and now I have the space and things to do it. So I know some people will be pulling back their purse strings a little bit to buy art, but I can start preparing it for when markets open back up, and spend a little more time being creative and that whole thing. So that excites me quite a bit. And so as soon as we get unpacked, it's a little at a time here, and I was recovering from chemo up until very recently. I feel pretty good now, but that's next on the agenda. But I'll keep doing the webinars and probably do things about the art and a whole bunch of other stuff. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, I kind of wanted to expand on that because the next thing I wanted to talk about is I find it really interesting. We have a lot of like wildlife and landscape photographers in the Tamron Ambassador lineup, but everyone is so different. And I find it really interesting that you consider interiors and literally the photograph on the wall when you're shooting something that comes across as, kind of a natural and organic thing. So there's definitely this like subjective nature to how you're shooting them. Can you talk about how you shoot wildlife for interiors?
I can, and I'm going to try to pull up. I know I'm doing this on the fly, so I apologize for that. But let's take this for example. So things that wouldn't, and this is from my new nature photography class, which is like a 2-hour class. So I'm just pulling little excerpts. But normally, for example, if people were to shoot a picture like this, which is of red-winged blackbirds, I did it a little bit high key. It really wouldn't win in a photo contest or be anything dramatic. But there are things that work well for interiors, and the way we can prepare images for interiors, such as this polyptych, which is meaning many. You might have heard of diptych or triptych. This is a polyptych. But that kind of stuff works better than our traditional wildlife and nature, because normally I'm flipping all over the map on this, but normally if we were to go, let me find a picture here. If we were to go and put like something like this, if we were to go and put this and give it to someone and say, where would you hang this in your room? It's a beautiful picture from a nature photography standpoint. But if I were to try to find a place for that on the wall in my house, I go, well, I don't have yellow and lime green and Kelly green and beige and brown and blue. Like, it's way too intense. People usually decorate, and you can read up on color theory, but people usually decorate in about 3 colors maybe more, but it's usually tone on tone or very related colors in their home. And so traditional nature photography, and to some extent landscapes too, you know, if I were to shoot a field of flowers with a rainbow and red rocks and a blue sky with a sunset and clouds that are orange, like that'd be stunning in a magazine. But on somebody's wall, it's way too much color, and people want to create different environments. So I kind of specialize. I mean, I do the traditional stuff. This is my picture just like anything else, but I have really paid more attention to interior design elements. In my background too, before I was a psychologist, I was a floral designer for 15 years and worked with interior decorators, and I learned a lot of tips from them. So now I try to do, in addition to the traditional nature photography, I try to do better photography for interiors, and it just is a totally different set of rules for doing that than what we're used to. So sometimes the really classic stuff can work, like in this case, and sometimes there's a lot more Photoshop and things that are involved in that. And the funny thing is in the classic nature photography sense, Photoshop is generally shied away from, or people are sensitive about it, or you get purists that are like, I never Photoshop. In the art world, people are surprised that you wouldn't. They want you to create something that works well for that vibe, that requirement, that room, so on and so forth. So there isn't the negativity with Photoshop. It's expected, and you're expected to know how to do things well to create the look for the room that they want. Now that's more of a traditional picture, but I will pull up, for example, here.
Well, I was gonna say, when you go on a shoot, and I'm kind of going off script a little bit, but do you go out with the intention of shooting for an interior, or do you just kind of go expecting to shoot the, like, say, the specific animal or the space, and then you just look for different types of things, or do you go with the purpose of, like, these are going to be interior shots?
Yeah, and it's a great question you asked, because what we do for traditional photography and what I find works well for interiors is often completely different lighting conditions. And often the crappy light that we would think is awful for traditional nature photography can be some of the best light for interior. So I find I can maximize my day by getting more shooting hours out of the day by pivoting from shooting this style to this style. But that said, it takes some practice, because you're so used to walking out there in the field and shooting how you've always done, this classically trained way. And you need a very different thought process for interiors than you do for magazines. And so I often find it's a little bit easier for me to walk out and shoot one thing or the other, because it's sort of like if you walk out and shoot macro all day, you get better at shooting macro and your brain is thinking about macro than if you are landscape. And flipping back and forth really quickly between the two is usually problematic. Can't say for everybody, but sometimes your brain just can't jump thought processes that quickly. So I find I sort of like to go in my lane, and usually that can be dictated by the weather as to which one I choose. Great question.
Very cool. Well, and then to wrap this whole kind of portion up, what advice would you give to a photographer that is looking to make this their full-time job, just based on your experience?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. And, and it's something, I'm just throwing a couple other pictures up here, some things that I've done while we talk. So from a business perspective, and I would say this, and I worked in large business and small business before I started my own. You need to be good at photography, but and this may sound trite, you really need to be good at marketing and know how to market or know who to get to do it for you. You need to really have good business acumen. Some of the things that I have been told from like photo festivals and conferences that I've done is that when they work with different photographers, they have great images, but they're horrible on the other things they need done. Like, we need a marketing video from you. We need, a session descriptions. We need you to be on time, whatever it might be. All of that kind of writing and business acumen isn't so strong with some photographers, and it really gets frustrating for those organizers. So I would say love being an entrepreneur at least as much, if not more, than you love photography, because it really does consume a lot of your day. I spend very little time shooting, not nearly as much as I would like to, because the business end takes so much. So be prepared for that if you start. And I see some people that, balance it in different ways. You really have to have a passion for both. If you feel like you would be good starting, any of 5 or 10 different businesses, one of which being photography, do that. But if photography is your love and you're not really sure about all the other things, maybe only do it a little bit or do it part-time. And there's nothing wrong with being an enthusiast and enjoying your photography for you. I don't know that people value that enough, and it really is something to be proud of. The word amateur in French means lover of something. And I feel bad when people say, oh, I'm just an amateur. I'm like, no, you are an amateur. You are a lover of something. Embrace that. Go for it. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I didn't know that.
Me
That's what
either.
amateur means.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. I did
I
not
love
know that was a French derived word. So
Yeah.
I can be proud. I'm an amateur and love it.
No, that's so wonderful. And I wrote down, I love that quote, love being an entrepreneur more than being a photographer. I think that is a great word of advice to someone that wants to make a career out of this. It's just necessary.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and before I pass it back to Erica, I just wanted to let you know you have a few more fans in the chat saying they were inspired by your high key webinar this week. Multiple people saying that it was great. They attended your Wednesday webinar and that they're very thankful to attend. So with
I've
that,
got lots more on my website. So check the other ones out if you like that, and I'll be able to see you online for those classes too. So, and thanks
cool.
for the kind words. I appreciate it.
cool. All right. Well, we have a last kind of couple of more spitfire questions just so that we can get to know little details about you. But what is your go-to lens?
Well, if I'm doing wildlife, I absolutely adore the Tamron 150-600 G2. It is always in my bag, if not always on my camera. That is, that's just what I do. I love wildlife, so I love that lens. It's a great compression landscape lens, as well as, zooming in for your wildlife. And in case people are wondering, I shoot it with a Canon 5D Mark IV. If not that lens, my next favorite kind of good walking around lens that also works well for portraits is the 35-150 Tamron lens. And right after that, I would say the 15-30 wide angle lens. That thing is like butter. I just love that lens. So in order, those are my 3 favorites, but Tamron has a wonderful lineup. I have been so impressed, and I say that sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Great people, great products. You're the largest lens pack manufacturer in the world. You've got to do something right, and you really do. So, but
I want to say thank you, but it's not like I build them. So
right.
I'm just gonna.
I love that the 35-150 has become such a favorite. It's such a great lens. It's such a great lens.
It's so sharp and it's easy to use. And in my cowboy workshop, I ended up using the 150-6 or the 35-150. Like that was it. I mean, I could use other things, but that was enough for me, and I don't get a ton of time to shoot teaching, but it was enough for me to do everything I needed to do for that workshop. Yeah, could I have done other things too? You bet. But I would say that would cover 90% of what I would ever want to shoot or need to shoot at that workshop. It's just a wonderful, those 2 things are just favorites of mine. They're wonderful lenses. Sharp, beautiful, love it.
Yeah, I just actually checked it out myself. I was out in Cuba for a workshop, and it's not a place that I can really be changing things up that quickly on the fly. So 35-150 was kind of the perfect range, and I never took it off. I had that lens the entire week. It was amazing. So I was really happy.
It's awesome. And that lens is optimized around 85 millimeters. So people are often familiar with the, 85 primes, and, everybody loves that 85 prime for portraits. This lens can do it, but you've got the whole zoom range, which is also wonderful. So it's just a special lens. It really, really is.
Good choice. All right. So next question. What is something on your photo shoot that you can't live without? And it doesn't have to be gear, like it doesn't have to be a lens or a bag or anything. It can be a granola bar. But
yeah, that is a wonderful question. So, aside from maybe my cell phone, because I love to take B-roll of people if I'm doing workshops, and because they never get pictures of themselves, so I like to do all that. But in addition to that, I have my Photo Pro tripod, FOTOPRO. That tripod, I never thought I ever needed another tripod. I bought one about 10 years ago. I'm like, buy it once, buy it right, be done with it. I had a really nice gimbal head and all that, and, kind of prime top of the line stuff. And then one of my friends, Alex, he's like, Lisa, you need to check out this Photo Pro tripod. We were at Photo Plus Expo 3 years ago. And I was like, oh, Alex, I don't really need another tripod, but I'll indulge you, take me. And he showed me this tripod that blew my mind. It's called the Eagle series, and I have something on my website about it too. You can find that. But the Eagle series has been, I mean, it's 4.5 pounds. It holds 33 pounds, and the gimbal head is actually a gimbal head, a ball head, and a video fluid head all in one. So I don't need to switch on it. Like I don't need to I don't have to carry all that extra stuff, which is extra weight. So like on my Alaska workshops, we're only allowed 40 pounds when we do the flyouts for the bears. And, it used to be my tripods and all those different heads would weigh so much. Now 4.5 pounds, and it folds up enough to fit in my carry-on, but it holds 33 and it shoots in 360 degrees in any direction. It's magic. I absolutely love it. So that now has become my can't live without tripod. It's awesome. So those are my two favorite things.
Cool. Okay. And also all these, I know that you do a lot of Alaska and travels and whatnot, but do you have a dream photo shoot, whether it's a location or like just a dream type of photo shoot?
Yeah, Antarctica, I still have not been able to get there for various reasons. So Antarctica would be top of my bucket list for sure. So one of these days, and if not Antarctica, Greenland. Here I live in Arizona, but I love the cold places. I'm a Michigan girl at heart. So I love the cold places.
Man,
but yeah, those are two.
I think even the thought of like Googling how to get to Antarctica intimidates me.
I love it.
It's not a trip for the faint of heart.
Like thinking about it is scary to me, but I'm sure it's like magical.
You can come with me and we'll just take it slow. We'll have a good time.
That's awesome. That's definitely on my list. I mean, everywhere's on my list, but that's a solid start for sure. So I know that you've also mentioned, really, really loving working with Tamron lenses and whatnot, but why Tamron? Why, I know that it's important to you, but why did you choose to stick it out?
So I came by all of this quite honestly. I had been a Canon shooter, and this is not anything against Canon, but I had been a Canon shooter since I was 13 and got my first Canon A1 35mm camera. And I kept getting clients who, and I eventually got the big primes and all that stuff. I had clients who kept saying, Lisa, I want to go to Alaska with you, but I can't afford an $8,000 or $9,000 lens and a trip. I'm like, it's one or the other. And, what do I do? So I ended up testing side by side the Sigma 150-600 and the Tamron 150-600. And I did it for about 2 months side by side. I was loaned copies of both. And the Tamron just kept coming away as the winner for me. And, and everybody's experience may vary, but for me, it was faster at picking up birds in flight, faster focused. I felt like the images were just better. I liked the feel of it, the weight, everything about it. And I started with the 150-600. And that's where it started to really sink in. I'd kind of been like, oh, I don't know. And that's third-party lens, and I don't really know a lot about it. And I became not only a believer, but like an advocate. I was like, oh my gosh, you have to try this lens. And so one thing led to another. And then I was trying the others and trying the others and trying the others of Tamron's lineup. And I ended up selling all my Canon lenses and exclusively shoot Tamron now. And if anybody's wondering, that's before I became an ambassador. So my experience is very, very organic with this. And I've just been thrilled. And these lenses are awesome. If you haven't tried it within the last couple of years, go find a way to borrow one, rent one, buy one, try them out. And I also have on my website, Mark Morris and I are doing a webinar on May 4th on lenses and what you need to know. And it's not a Tamron sales pitch. It is an education that will blow your mind about lenses and what you need to know and how to pick them and focusing and like 100 things that you would love to know about lenses. So we're doing that May 4th, and you can go on my website and register. It's free.
Awesome. Okay.
Very cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I gotta talk to Mark and see if I can jump in on that one.
Please do.
Is it the science of optics presentation that he does? Ish.
I think he is borrowed from different bits and
Okay.
pieces, but we literally start at one end of the lens of, generally speaking, a lens, and we walk you all the way through to the other end of the lens.
Cool.
What goes on with image stabilization, what is better or worse than image stabilization, focus points, how does that work, lens calibration with your camera. Why do some lenses work well with some cameras and don't work well with others, even if they're designed to be, compatible with that brand of camera? Everything you'd want to know. And there's so many little surprises. We did it once last month already, and that one's available as a recording on my website. Just click on the webinars and tutorials in the upper right side of my website. But we're doing it again because we had a waiting list. We had so many people that wanted to do it. So get in early, sign up, and join us. So it's a lot of fun, and it's free, but
I'm
it's
gonna
educational.
I'm gonna step in real quick before the last question. Jody on Facebook is asking, what would be the ideal lens? What would be your ideal lens for a studio portrait?
I have to say, up until I started with the Tamron stuff, I was, initially thinking the 85 prime would be this wonderful lens. Now I would say either the 35 prime with Tamron or the 35 to 150. I use in my portrait work in studio and outside of the studio, but I do pet portraiture and a bunch of other things. That is my go-to because it's so flexible and you don't have to keep moving forward or backward. You can just focus on the compositions that you want and stay engaged with your subject. And if I'm doing portraits of pets, you need to plug in so much to what the pet's doing. You can't constantly be worried about moving backwards or forwards because it changes the behaviors of the animals. So for me, I would say 35 to 150 as my number one for what I do. And, possibly check out, well, I say the 35 if you're doing, I'd like to do environmental portraiture. If not that, I would pick the 70 to 210 as another option for portraits in a studio.
Cool.
That's my choice, but your results may vary.
And you mean the 35-1-4, right? When you say 35?
Yes.
The new one?
Yeah, you got to be careful of lens distortion. You can't get too close to your subject. So if you're pulling back and doing a little bit more environmental things, or if you have a little bit of a wider berth with your portraits, beautiful. If you're doing a bride and a pretty backdrop, perfect. If you're getting really close and doing headshots, you're going to get too much lens distortion. You want to shoot at about 50 millimeters or higher to reduce that distortion. So that's why I say I really like the 35 to 115. It's sharp, sharp, sharp from end to end.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Nice. Good choices. 35 is one of my favorites too. So
yeah,
good choices.
So flexible. Yeah.
So last question on our list for tonight. I know that your workshop with Mark is coming up next, but what is next for you in regards to, after we can kind of start moving around again and get back to whatever quote unquote normal will be in the future? What's next for you?
So next on the theoretical agenda is if we can start working together in August. So far, most of my June and July things have been postponed. If we can start working together in August, I do a hummingbirds and bat photography workshop down in Southern Arizona. So cool. That's still on the calendar. And then after that, we'll do things I think an order sequence, but we have the Magic of Cowboys. There's some fall events that I'm doing, different festivals, possibly Photo Plus Expo again, if that happens. Everything is so COVID, like this temporary world we're in with COVID from day to day. But those are some of the events and things I'm doing. Personal projects include still working on a book that I'm doing, and then getting some more personal artwork out and making some new connections with locations that I can sell my work, whether it's interior decorators, stores, things like that, gift shops, just continuing to build those relationships. And of course, webinars and things like that will never go out of style. So.
Yeah, I feel like Sara, you had said this a couple of times already, but webinars are definitely, if they haven't been important, now they're going to be just as important as being out in public. So agreed.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing in many ways. It brings it right to people, and it's a little more environmentally friendly. There's a lot of benefits to this, and I think people will transition this as many bad things that are happening with COVID. There's some really good outcomes too.
Mm-hmm. True.
Absolutely.
I want to be with people though. I'm ready to get back out there and be with people in the world. And
I'm with you.
I miss hugging people.
Just want to give you a high five.
Yeah, right. I want to hug. I want to high five. I want to have a beer with someone, man, it would be great. Someday
Right?
we'll all get back to it.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
well, Lisa, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
You are welcome. And I appreciate your time so much with all of this. And gosh, you guys stay safe. And everybody out there too, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay inspired. You know, the more you keep positive with these things, I learned that lesson with my cancer so well, but the more positivity that we can do, it makes all of this more bearable. And all of us can feed off of that. And it can be a really positive experience. And I say that with all sincerity. So be positive and just, gosh, hang in there and know that despite the negatives, we can still make it. We really, really can. So,
Absolutely.
True.
yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I really appreciate it. I've had fun. I hope this has been fun for all of you too.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We'll see you on the road soon.
All right. Sounds good. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe. And I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Let's see.